Welcome, everybody, to Radicalized Truth Survives, episode 139. Today, Hi-Fi and I will be interviewing our friend Monique Camarra. She, of course, is a geopolitical analyst from Italy. We're going to be talking about Romania's big pro-democracy win, how that fits in with what just happened in Canada and Australia. And we're going to be talking more about how all of this is part of one step toward beating the global fascist insurgency. Have a listen. We don't need to introduce Monique Camarra to our guest. She has been on the show probably more than anybody. But just in case you're new to RadPod, she's a geopolitical analyst based in Italy. She does an incredibly important Substack called Eurofile. You can find it at camarra.substack.com, Camarra. Let's dive in. We have some breaking news out of Romania that I think is very important for our audience. This was a real cliffhanger.
Yeah. Definitely. We know that, okay, there were two main, presidential candidates who were heading it off in the second round, in the elections. Nucasor Dan against George Simeon. Nucasor Dan is basically the former mayor of Bucharest, and he's been billed sort of as the pro-European, and centrist, candidate. They managed to put together what is so surprising about all of this. They managed to get him over the line in a week's time. They mobilized, his campaign mobilized a base of people who believe in the EU, believe in European values, democracy, and have rejected all of the populism and sort of like the Trump brand, that Simeon was bringing, the nationalist, and may I add, sort of like the communist nationalist base. There's one thing that's really important about this, this election in particular, especially when we're going to be looking at other elections in Europe, is that there's a generational divide. What is going on? You have an older population that was used to the sort of like nationalist and communist powers, older politicians who had been there forever and who had actually contributed to the corruption that's there and the system that was falling apart. So what young people and pro-European, that's what they mobilized. They managed, Heidi, to mobilize 2 million voters over what they had. So Simeon did not lose, what he brought, what the voters that he had in the first round, because that's why everybody was saying he was going to win. He did not gain more voters. Nicosor did that,
Wow.
So that is absolutely amazing. Amazing because I was dreading this election in particular because of Romania's geopolitical importance. Being right there, on the Black Sea shores, and then, next door we've got Hungary on one side, to the south you've got Serbia, and you've got Ukraine, just north. So this was a really, really important nation to keep it within the European bloc, within the NATO bloc. France, for example, has troops that are stationed there for NATO. So can you imagine what would have happened had this, the Simeon, who is like the Trump brand populism thug, simply a thug.
Yeah.
If he had taken over.
And we were so close, and it was really the Romanians mobilizing against what was clearly a pro-Russian operator. And this just could not be better news. And Monique, in line of what happened recently in Canada and Australia, how does this all fit together?
Now, this fits together because I was looking through all of this, and I said, you know what? We are in a pivotal moment, geopolitically and internationally. There is such a sense of instability. If you talk to anybody, that's the first thing they say. They don't know whether they should be getting married. They don't know whether they should be investing. Companies don't know because of the tariffs that are going on. Do I invest? Do I grow? Where do I put my money? Where is my future? Young kids, as well. They're really lost. And this is such instability. So what happened in Canada, is that you had that conservative brand, the same brand that was showing up in Romania, showed up in Canada with Poilievre, and also in Australia with Dutton. Okay, so what I'm seeing is that you've got conservatism. That brand of conservatism is not successful. The reason why it's not successful is that, sooner or later, when you promise things, you actually have to get it done. They need leaders. People are looking for leaders who have, let's say, a personality. Their own person is someone who is credible. In what? Okay, someone who is not just sort of, as Simeon was a thug. He was what do you call it? He was a hooligan. Okay, a soccer hooligan. Right? You got Poilievre, who hasn't done anything except for being in politics. He was brought up in politics, never actually had a job. In Australia, it's a little different, but at the same time, the Liberal Party in Australia, their platform was they were just kept flip-flopping, okay, the whole time. So people were looking for, especially in this time of turmoil, especially now where they don't know, okay, what is coming up? Do we spend money on defense? How do we keep everything going? They want capable people. That brand of, thuggish slogans, things that are not in with the shared values that we've had for such a long time, they're starting to reject that brand. Okay, that's why. And another thing too, look what is happening in the United States. If you are attaching your name to a Trump-like brand, all right, that's what they can see what is happening. So, and that's why they're rejecting it. They're saying, okay, it's not working. We can't go with that. And they feel that let's say the actual leaders who have been voted in are capable. They're looking at the person and they're looking at the platform. They don't want BS anymore. They're looking it's a serious moment right now. And we saw this turn, if I may, I would say, from the UK, France, and German elections, because all of those went the same way. They want people who are serious. And that's the
Right.
way I look at it.
So
I really think.
what's amazing about that is we sort of called it the Trump effect when I had you on a Betty Dangerous happy hour. It's like nobody wants what America has right now, and some of the politicians who won in Canada and Australia, particularly, were down prior
Oh,
to
yeah.
all of this MAGA tariff, narrative shit, and basically the citizens showed up and said, "We want
Yeah.
stability," and that is
Yeah.
something I learned from you.
Yeah.
I've got another question, but Hi-Fi, you jump in.
So my biggest question is, uh, are people starting to see the hand of Russia behind these candidates in Europe?
Definitely. Definitely. They're starting to see that the information, and even let's just put it this way: there is a portion of the population that do. Okay. There's also a portion of the population that look at this information that's being put out there, and they're seeing that it's not lining up with the reality of what they are actually seeing playing out geopolitically. Okay. So information warfare, for example, is really effective when it is for a tactical used in a tactical way, not, let's say, in information warfare per se, okay, without it being attached to some sort of operation in a grander scheme. This is where what is happening now, people see it for what it is. Okay, I honestly believe that that's what's starting to happen. So, I mean, sure, you can throw out all the slogans you want, but in a situation where geopolitics and the relationships that are going on out there, the war in Ukraine and a possible war in Europe, okay, within, let's say, 18 months or 2 years, people are getting really, really serious. They want to know, right, who is going to take hold of the situation and go forward. The slogan is not going to cut it anymore. And as I was saying, in information warfare, people are paying attention, okay, to platforms. They're paying attention. They're not just buying it and that's it. That's not what we're seeing at the election, at the polls. That's what we're seeing. And another thing too, it may work in Russia. It may work in closed systems. Okay. but not in open systems and societies where they do have a real free choice, right? That's where information, all of this information warfare doesn't work in a certain way, because if you're not going to translate that into reality, people get tired of it. Okay. And we have access to real information. We can see what is going on. The markets are reacting to Trump, right?
Right.
Uh, and that's how I see it.
I wish,
Yeah,
I think if America had been under occupation in the way some of these Eastern
yeah,
European countries had been, that maybe we would not have been so easily duped. But because we didn't have that lived experience, too many people just sort of bought what you were just talking about, that disinformation, the slogans, etc. I just had Stephen Douglas, a cultural archaeologist, on my Betty's Happy Hour, and he was talking about the distant folklore galaxies that people are living in. And I find that really fascinating because as I travel around Europe, I hear taxi drivers, even within a few words, I know if they're living in a
yeah,
disinformation galaxy. I can tell just within half a sentence. I know
yeah,
exactly where they're going and who's kind of mind hacking them. And I
yeah,
find it
yeah,
all really, really fascinating. But what you're basically saying is there are countries throughout the world that are waking up to this and want
I think so.
stability and want people to deliver them sanity and good policy. So that's
Yeah,
really
yeah,
quite wonderful to hear. So
yeah,
let's just segue over for the last bit of this to what I'm calling again, based on Stephen Douglas's work, what I'm calling Istanbul shit. Stephen Douglas writes about distant folklore, writes Decoding Trolls. He basically said Istanbul peace talks is one of those dark fairy tales that seed their way into the narrative, like Russian separatists and, all these phrases that we learn. Like calling Wagner a special military, I forget what he called it, but like
Private Military
you know,
Corporation,
private
PMC.
military, when we know this is just,
yeah.
them doing the Russian military's bidding. And let's talk about your perspective on this because you refer to it as like the faux peace talks.
Yeah, they're not. I don't think they're real in any sense of the word. I think that each player went to the peace talks with a certain mission in mind. None of them. Okay, the Ukrainians and the Europeans know damn well that the Russians are not. This was not anything at all to do with either getting to some sort of deal on a ceasefire. We all know. I mean, it's not the first time that either the Europeans or any of us looking on at what the events in Ukraine since 2014, we know the way they operate. We know the way they operate from even before that with Georgia and Chechnya. So it's sort of, I call them faux because, they're not really, okay, it's sort of like on the surface for media purposes, okay. Trump, I think, is just waiting for the moment when he can just do those deals. He said it himself in the tweet. I mean, more blatant or transparent than that. I don't know how you can get right without him actually putting it in your face. We want to lift sanctions. We want to get into business again. Let me remind you too, but he's not the only one because in Europe there's a really huge powerful lobby of businesses and industries that would love to get back to business, okay, with Russia. Here in Italy, in our little country, the foreign minister had a meeting with Russian businesses, Italian businesses that are operating in Russia, and they were begging him to, set the conditions so that they could get back to work. So this is something that I think is almost everywhere. Um, Trump has his own views and his own thing, but I don't think anything is going to come of these peace talks at all. I don't even call them peace talks. I don't know what you would actually call them.
Yeah,
It's
I
really
know. We need to,
difficult. The language
Performative?
is difficult. The language
I
is
call it
difficult.
reality TV fascism because we basically see this as part of the reality TV sort of narrative warfare, and it buys Putin time. They think something's going to happen, and meanwhile, I think Zelensky's been handling things pretty masterfully. Anything else you want to say to sort of inform our viewers on kind of
Yeah.
how what's happening in America is affecting Europe and the changes that are happening, and even actually any forecasting on some of the upcoming elections.
I think, well, we've got Poland, okay, coming up. That's going to be tight. That's going to be very tight. but now the center right, okay, more aligned, the PIS aligned with them. The top candidates already said that they want to cut funding for Ukraine. So I think that will be something to look for and make sure that I think, which is kind of strange because before they were very much in favor of keeping giving support to Ukraine. So I don't know whether they're aligned now more with Orban and with the True Finns and all of that, that galaxy of countries. In other terms, I mean, we see what's going on in the United States, and I can tell you that people just put their hands in the air and say, what the hell is going on? Where is the United States? Where is America? Because what we see is not, the America everyone has known. And this is very, very disheartening for several reasons. Another thing that I'm seeing, and I could be wrong, but we'll see how it's starting to sort of play out. The United States seems to be the Trump administration, let's just put it that way. The Trump administration seems to be aligning or would like to give much more of its energy and diplomatic, let's say, resources, so on and so forth, to the Middle Eastern countries. Okay. And I kind of see this, I could be wrong, and we'll see how it plays out. But it's sort of like a lever that they want to use even against Europe. Okay. So this is something to keep in mind as we go forward. Again, everything could change. All right. We do know, for example, that the United States is still giving, let's say, military support, intelligence support to Ukraine. That's fundamentally, important. And what I would like to see, and what they should, because today I think was the 17th package of aid package for Ukraine. They're working on the 18th, but I'd like to see the oil prices being capped much lower than what they're saying. They would like to put it at $50 for the Urals. I'd like to see it go much lower, because that would help drain the Russian economy, which is teetering. It is truly teetering. Going
Yes.
to the Shadow Fleet, now I know that they did 200. I think they put something like 200
Yeah.
vessels, something like that.
189 shadow fleet
Yeah,
oil tankers
there
today
you
were
go.
sanctioned, and
Yeah,
in the announcement they quote the late Senator John McCain, who once said Russia is a gas station
yeah,
masquerading as a country.
yeah,
So at least
yeah,
at least that was something.
yeah. It is. It's going to be difficult again, all of the compliance and also enforcement issues that we've had up until now. That's extremely difficult. And maybe in a future episode, I'll tell you how they actually skirt, all of the sanctions, oil sanctions, and stuff like that, because it's really, really fascinating how they do it. Another thing that's really important is the timing. Now would be a fantastic time for both the EU and the US to ramp things up, because Russia may have maybe 2 campaigns left, until the end of the year. And that is when they're going to be, let's say, at the weakest. This would be the moment to do it. They would also have to, they still have enough also for, in terms of military personnel, soldiers, boots on the ground up until the end of the year, but then they would probably have to start, some sort of conscription campaign, or if they want to go forward. So it
That's
would
a
be very
super,
good.
super good note. That's a
Yeah,
good
I mean, it
note.
would be
I really
great
love the
to
fact
really, to really hit
now's
them
the
hard now.
time. I'd written
Now's
in
the time.
March, Europe should strike now by going all in on supporting Ukraine while
Yeah,
Putin is still weak. I think it's
yeah,
really important that the Pope, of all the world leaders he could have met with, that he chose to meet with Zelensky first. And I thought
yeah,
that that was quite a
yeah,
beautiful statement. I got
yeah,
lots of hope there. Um,
yeah,
Monique
yeah,
Camarra, any last words? This is really good. I mean, clearly, you're so right when you frame it with Starmer's election, Macron's reelection, you have Germany's election, and then you have Canada and Australia and now Romania. So that is actually a really, really good sign that,
yeah,
again, the disaster that is the Trump reelection in America is really having global ramifications, and people are now currently in power who might not have been had that not have occurred. It seems like the world is waking up to that, and that's
Yeah.
really, really important. Final
Well,
thought,
it's
final
also,
word.
yeah, it's also a testament to how the Biden administration, for its strengths and weaknesses, was able to be that that country, that administration that did hold things together, that did give the idea of stability. So that's a very important point. I know that there's a lot of debate going on, but I would like to repeat this because I think a lot of people are missing, okay, the bigger picture here of what it meant, because it's not just President Biden, what he was. He had an administration going, okay, and they were, they were reaching out globally. There was US aid, okay, helping the soft power that was there that now is not there anymore. So you see, it's not just Trump himself, it's that sort of void and vacuum that now the Trump administration is leaving globally, where Russia and China are stepping in, and okay, and the EU can only go so far, okay, into things. And this is what we're seeing. So people are really, really looking for leadership. Look at, Heidi, look at the reaction that there was when the Pope was actually elected. I've seen quite a few of them, all right, since living here, but also as a kid. The emotion that meant that people were craving for something good, good people in our administrations, good people that we can look up to and to rally us. If you're religious, then the Pope is your guy. If you're not, and you're, or whatever, you can decide, okay, I need a civic, someone who can bring out those values, someone who I can know at least, okay, they may make mistakes, but at least I know that the heart is there and the mind is there for my nation and for the values that we all stand for.
Yes, man, I've been praying for decency and empathy to make a comeback. So maybe
Yeah,
this is the beginning of what we're seeing. Hi-Fi, any final
I hope
question?
so.
I just I don't I view these as wins, like we've won some battles,
Yeah.
but the war is global, and
Mm-hmm.
are we going to keep the pressure on?
Yeah. Well, that's what we have to know, that it's going to be ups and downs, ups and downs. I do agree that if I go a little farther down the road, it doesn't look that great in terms of, right, the whole geopolitical big blocks that may be, okay, going up, rubbing up against each other, even in kinetic, okay, warfare. That's kind of scary. But we have to take one step at a time. There's no other way, right? As citizens, I'm talking about. Leadership is a different thing. And I think they are thinking in larger, let's say, what is going on, the larger ramifications. I truly think they do. So let's just hope hi-fi, because that's the only we got to just keep
Yeah,
going, man.
man.
That's what else,
Yeah,
right?
we got to just keep going. We got to just keep going. Well,
Yeah,
good job, Romania. Good job,
yeah,
Monique Camarra. Thank you, High Fidelity, as always, for all the work that you do on this show. And till we meet again under some sunny skies somewhere, we'll just keep taking one step in front of the other, as Monique said.
yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.